So welcome everyone to our virtual restore. If you haven't been before, or if you're watching the recording after the fact, welcome. Restore is a community of young moms. We used to meet in person pre-pandemic, and we've shifted to virtual for now. And we really just wanted to build community and fellowship among other moms and share practical advice and wisdom and tips and tricks that we are learning in our motherhood. And so we always structure our restore as having a practical aspect and a spiritual aspect. And so we have Hailey leading us tonight in both of those, which will be focused on getting intentional in your marriage. So Hailey, take it away. Should I put the spotlight on you now?
Yeah, please spotlight me. Sometimes in family Zoom calls, my kids will be like, spotlight me, spotlight. Okay, so yes, I am Hailey. I have 3 boys, so my house is loud. And yeah, I'm going to be talking about first the family board meeting. So this comes from the Messy Family Project, which is a couple, Mike and Alicia Hernan. They have a podcast, but they've kind of expanded to more things. And they have 10 kids, and they are just great. They have a lot of tips and wisdom. And so this first talk is 100% them just relaying the information. I can take no credit for any of this. But my husband and I did this family board meeting recently, a few weeks ago, and we really liked it. It was a great way to have those conversations about goals and dreams, and just assessing where you're at as a family, and that sometimes you mean to have, but you never actually get around to it. So I'm gonna let okay, I can't share my screen. I'm gonna let I'm just gonna play a portion of the podcast, like a couple minutes, where they're just gonna intro the
try now.
Yeah, okay, I can now.
But where you are very intentional about looking at where have you come from, where are you now, and where do you want to go? And so it's a comprehensive 50,000 foot, if you will, view of 30,000 foot view of your family. And how are you doing overall? Not getting caught down in the details of your life, which we deal with every day, but really taking a minute to kind of step back and be like, okay, what's our big vision? Because if you don't have a vision, you really can't be moving in unity together.
Right. And I think about it from a professional standpoint, like how many people in our careers, go to, professional development conferences, go to, read books, take classes to get better at our job. Mm-hmm. We do all of these things where, companies go away for these big retreats and this, mm-hmm. this conference over here and this planning days here, all of these things, which are very important, creating mission statements, having vision statements, having values, and all these things are so great for a company. But the reality is that our family is far more valuable. We are far more valuable as parents to our little institution, our family,
absolutely,
than any role at a corporation are, right? You can replace, so in your job, you can be replaced. I'm sorry to tell you that. In your job, you can be replaced. Mm-hmm. But as a parent, you cannot be replaced. There might be somebody who has similar or the same skill sets as you in giftedness and what have you in the workforce. But as a family, when do we take time to say, let's take a pause? Because I feel like there are so many things that are just simply pulling at us as families. And I feel like particularly early in our marriage, probably the first, I don't want to say 10 years, because we took some moments of pause, but I feel like we were winging it, we were shooting from the hip because we had a sea of kids around us, and they were pulling at our apron strings. I don't know, but I felt like there was just a busy, frantic life.
Right. And sometimes you can really kind of like miss the forest for the trees. Like we get so caught up in the details of our lives that we forget about our bigger vision and what do we want to do. And I think
they really just keep talking forever, so it's hard to find a good spot to cut them off. All right, so you can go listen to their podcast. They have several episodes on the family board meeting, so they have lots more stuff. And they have this worksheet, which I will send out to all of you after and post on Facebook. But I'm basically just going to go through the worksheet and kind of give you an idea of what this family board meeting will look like. And it's called a family board meeting, but it's just you and your spouse. Like it's you're the executives, you're the CEO and whatever of your family. And so you're the ones meeting it. You don't involve your kids. So just to clarify, because I was a little confused at first. So I just want to start with this quote from Vatican II. It says, "The family is a kind of school of deeper humanity. But if it is to achieve the full flowering of its life and mission, it needs the kindly communion of minds and the joint deliberation of spouses." So the church is asking us to deliberate with our spouses, to have these conversations, and they're telling us that this is going to be key in our vocation as a family. So the first step of the family board meeting is to prepare for it. So you can plan a weekend away to do the family board meeting, but you can also just do it at home. My husband and I did it over several evenings and it was fine. I bought special snacks, so it was more fun, but I mean, do whatever works. But before you actually do the board meeting together, you want to each take time to prepare, to complete the assessment worksheet of affirmations and gather other stuff you might need. So the first section is affirm and assess. So you want to look back at your last year and think of what you want to affirm your spouse for, because that is a great way to start these conversations where you're going to be talking about goals and maybe talking about, we're kind of struggling in this area, whatever. Start with affirmations and the rest of it will go a lot better. And then there's 5 sections that you're going to assess. So spiritual life, marriage, family relationships, personal development, and family operations. So the worksheet has lots of questions to kind of prompt you in assessing those different areas. So you fill that out separately. And then the next step when you actually start your board meeting is to say those affirmations first, and then compare your assessment sheets. So go through and be like, what did you think about our marriage? What do you think about the kids? Whatever. Spiritual life, all of that. So this will help give you a common starting place for your discussions. The next section is answer the call to greatness. So you need to start by knowing your why and articulating your values. So there is, actually, I don't have this on the I don't have the worksheet, whatever, visual of this, because it's really just brainstorming dreams and kind of articulating what's important to our family, what values do we have, our family meals a really big thing, hosting people a really important part of our family culture, is music a big thing we focus on as a family, is our faith really important, is extended family important, those kind of things. So it's looking at your values and then looking at the next 10 years of your family life and dreaming. What do you want your family to look like in 10 years? What do you want your kids to feel? How do you want your relationships to be? All of that. So dream big. People often overestimate what they can accomplish in 1 year and underestimate how much they can do in 10 years. Discuss these dreams until you are united. Without unity, there can be no plan for your family. So the next section is when you get into the meat, I feel like. And this is when you define your goals and your family culture. So these are concrete steps you will take to move towards the vision that you've just talked about. So connecting these goals to your values defines why the goals matter and gives you motivation to accomplish them and helps you to be intentional about your family culture. So if extended family is a really important part of your family culture, then maybe setting up weekly extended family Zoom calls or planning to make a trip next summer or something, you know, putting that actually in your goals. So again, this looks at those 5 sections that you assessed at the beginning: the spiritual life, the marriage relationship, family relationships, personal development, and family operations. And there's room for 3 goals for each because you have to start small. There's probably a lot that you assess that you're like, we should maybe work on that. What should we, like, this is something we should address. But pick 3 for each. And you don't have to figure out kind of all of the nitty-gritty of each goal. For example, if in marriage relationship you decide we want to have a weekly date night, you can just put weekly date night. You don't need to put it in your calendar yet or figure out what night would be best or like decide how you're going to plan these things or whatever. Just put like your goal and you can figure out the details later. That's the next section. So you can't work on everything all at once. So the next step is to discern your priorities. You need to decide what the rallying cry is for your family. This goal may only take 3 to 5 months to accomplish, so be sure to come up with 3 or 4 goals and put them in priority order. To zero in on your top priorities, ask yourselves, if we could only accomplish one thing in the next 3 months, what would it be? Don't forget to invite God into your discernment process. He wants your family to flourish. So of those goals, just decide which ones you want to prioritize and start with those. The next section is making it a reality. So you need to decide the next steps to making this goal a reality. So look at your top priority goal first and decide what action items are needed, who will need to do them, and when will they be done. You also now need to align your schedule and your budget with your vision, values, and priorities that you've defined. So if you say that you want to have a weekly date night, you need to now put it in your schedule. You need to decide who's going to plan it and put it in your budget if you want to have food or something, I don't know. And you can do that for kind of your first few goals if you want. My husband and I did like our first top 3 goals. We kind of had an action item for each to start with. And then that's kind of the end of the board meeting. But the next step is really important. It's monthly and weekly check-ins. So put in your calendar a brief check-in each week to see how you're doing on your priority goals. And then a monthly check-in should be a time to look at the bigger picture, to go back to your full list of goals and to reassess if it's time to focus on another one of your goals. Maybe you're like, yeah, you know what, we're doing really good with the weekly date nights. I think we have capacity to, you know, work on music lessons with the kids or whatever is your next priority thing. I have found the weekly check-ins super helpful, because sometimes you can set these goals and then one of you forgets about it kind of or whatever. And I always feel like, okay, if, like say screen time, like, okay, let's try not to be on our phones after dinner when the kids are still awake and we're playing with them, whatever. If I see my husband is like on his phone and I'm like, hey, remember the goal, we said we weren't going to do this, I feel like we can sometimes get into a little argument, you know, like it feels more like nagging. But if it's a weekly check-in of like, hey, how do you feel like you're doing with this? Like, how's it been going? It's a good way to remind yourselves of your goal without feeling like one person is like being a nag, basically. So yeah, it's been really good. And it's really quick. It's like, hey, so what were our goals? Oh yeah, this, and this. Yeah, okay, that's going okay. Oh, that is a good reminder. I should probably try to make more time for that this week, whatever. So, okay, that's the end. So that is the family board meeting. I highly recommend it. It's a great, like, I don't know, a great tool to have these conversations that we want to have with our spouse, but often we're too tired and we don't always remember, like, oh yeah, we should be setting goals. But this is a great way to kind of bring up things you've been like, oh yeah, I have been noticing that one of our kids has been struggling with this or whatever. It can be a great time to have those discussions. So we are going to move into small groups now. So if you want to just take a picture of my screen right now in the discussion questions, because I can't share them with our breakout rooms. So just take out your phone and take a picture. All right, so moving on to our next talk. Our spiritual talk is going to be about praying with your spouse. So I want to share a quote from Pope Francis. This is in an address he made to a group of engaged couples. He said, "On this journey, prayer is important. It is necessary, always. He for her, she for him, and both together. Ask Jesus to multiply your love." So I think we all agree that praying with your spouse sounds like a good idea, but the struggle is in making it happen. So maybe you're not sure where to start, or maybe your spouse isn't on board with praying, or maybe life with kids is busy and it's just not happening despite your best intentions. So my husband and I have had seasons where praying together happens regularly, and other seasons where we just can't seem to actually do it despite our best planning, whatever. So I'm going to share a few tips and practical ideas that have helped us, but we're not perfect at this, so this is just to spark a discussion, really. So my first tip is to start small. If you currently aren't praying together regularly, don't start with something that seems overwhelming. So instead of planning to start a daily rosary, maybe start by praying a decade together. My next tip is to know the season that you're in. So if you have a newborn who is fussy all evening, planning to pray together in the evening is not actually going to pan out, right? Same if your mornings are crazy trying to get your kids off to school, like planning to say a quick prayer in the morning together probably isn't feasible either. So just assess where you're at. Where do you have those pockets of quiet, or where could you make those pockets of quiet together where you could pray? And my last tip is to switch it up until you find what works. So my husband and I have been married for 7 years, and we've tried all the things. When we were preparing to get married, the priest said, like, make a plan now of what you're going to, how you're going to pray together. So we did. And then, like, I think by the end of our honeymoon, we had stopped doing that because it wasn't working. And so we've had a routine of doing like a different type of prayer every single day. We've prayed right after putting the kids to bed, or we've prayed right before we go to sleep. We've gotten up early before the kids, first thing in the morning, to pray intentions together. The point is, don't be afraid to try something for a while, and then if it's not working, switch to something else. Things are going to work in different seasons, so something can be great for a little while, with Lent coming up, you could do something for Lent, right? And then at the end of Lent, you could say, okay, like, let's try something new, or we really like this, we could keep going with it. So there's lots of things you can pray together: the Rosary, Chaplet of Divine Mercy, Liturgy of the Hours, read scripture together, take turns interceding for people in your life. Basically, any type of prayer can be prayed as a couple. So I'll share what my husband and I are currently doing. We got this idea from a marriage conference, and we really liked it so far. We're recently just getting back into the routine of waking up before the kids. My 6-month-old has good nights and bad nights, so sometimes I go back to sleep, but so the alarm goes off, and as soon as it does, we turn to each other and we take turns praying over each other. So that can sound kind of intimidating, like if you've ever gone to a retreat and had somebody pray over you, it could be like a long time or whatever. It's very short, it's very simple. So I'll say something like, put my hand on his shoulder, I'll say, Jesus, please bless Andrew today, help him in his day at work, in the meetings he has, in the difficult conversations he'll have to have with so-and-so, whatever, anything I can remember about his day, really. Bless his time with the kids, help him to be patient with Felix, or whatever. So that's about it. Then I'll just say maybe a Hail Mary and end. And then he'll do the same for me. So often we can say like, oh, I'll pray for you today in whatever, like we can ask our spouse to pray for us and what we're doing. But it's really nice to actually just stop and pray for them, with them. Yeah, so that we've really liked starting our day like that. I also really like doing it in the morning, because by the evening, I'm too tired, and I've convinced myself that lots of other things sound more fun. But in the morning, I haven't convinced myself that yet. So just get it done. I also just want to address, what if your husband isn't interested in praying together? My advice would be to still ask, especially if you have never asked before. Don't assume that he won't be willing to try it. My dad was an atheist for the first several years he was married to my mom. But he still would go to church just because he knew it was important to her. So you never know. You never know what they're going to say. And if they are open to it or not, maybe they might be open to something really small, like saying grace before meals or doing bedtime prayers with the kids. Just something small that kind of introduces them to prayer. And remember, even if you can't pray with your spouse, you can always pray for them, and your prayers are really powerful in their life. So as we get ready to enter into Lent, starts tomorrow, maybe there's something that you can do during this season to pray with your spouse or for your spouse. Or even just something to do to be more intentional in your marriage. One idea unrelated to prayer that I've done before is to write a journal each day of Lent of affirmations for my husband. And then I give it to him at Easter. I did this once, but when I did it, I found that it was such a blessing in our marriage. It was a blessing for him because he loves words of affirmation. So he just got this book that he could read of affirmations from me. But it was also a huge blessing to me as I was writing it, because each day I had to look back on my day and think, okay, what am I grateful for? And what is a good thing that he did today? What's a good quality I can affirm him for? And it just helped me to notice them more as I got into the practice of doing it. So yeah, there's lots of ideas you could do, praying with your spouse, praying for your spouse, or just an intentional way to build into your marriage this Lent. So I'm going to share my screen. I just have some discussion questions. They're my children. So again, you can just take a picture of this once it shows up.